Today on The Report, we discuss the tragic New York band camp bus crash, plus an update on the Biden administration's response to the war in Ukraine.
The street vendor sweep in Fullerton.
Plus the Union Pacific Trail outrage and the end of the writer's strike. The Report starts now.
Hello, I'm Lena Naranjo.
I'm Noah Sakadas.
And I'm Jasmine Alvarez. Don't forget to follow us on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our latest content.
In New York State, a commercial bus heading to a band camp toppled over into a ravine, resulting in 2 adult fatalities and several students seriously injured. On Interstate 84 in Orange County, New York, 40 students and 4 adults were heading from Farmingdale High School to a band camp in Greeley, Pennsylvania. While en route, the bus, quote, tumbled down a 50-foot ravine, end quote, resulting in 2 adult deaths, Gina Pelletieri, 43, and Beatrice Ferrari, 77, along with multiple injured student musicians. Once emergency officials arrived, the victims were transported to 6 local hospitals. New York Police Lieutenant Colonel Richard Mazone stated in a news conference, quote, primarily, information indicates a failure of a front tire may have been a contributing factor to this accident, end quote. The state's Governor Kathy Hochul empathically said during the conference, quote, imagine the fear, the screams, and the aftermath when these high school students, many of them freshmen, were surrounded by this chaos, end quote. The efforts of the first responders and rescuers were able to bring the students to safety within 45 minutes. CNN's aerial photos show a passenger bus in the forest on a median between eastbound and westbound routes. In addition to emergency officials at the crash site, a medical helicopter was parked nearby on the highway. Governor Hochul, in her press conference, called it a, quote, day of terror, end quote, and would acknowledge that, quote, we have families. We have a school district, a county, and indeed an entire state that is grieving at this time, end quote.
President Biden announced Monday that the United States plans to donate $2 billion towards Poland's defense modernization. The donation will be financed through the Foreign Military Financing Program, a policy tool that allows the U.S. to aid allied countries' militaries. In addition, the U.S. will donate an additional $60 million to Warsaw to make sure that Poland is able to cover the cost of items. In a statement released Monday, the U.S. Department said, quote, Poland is a stalwart ally, and Poland's security is vital to the collective defense of NATO's eastern flank. Loan proceeds will further advance Poland's military modernization effort across a wide range of capabilities, end quote. The funding comes at a time when Poland will no longer supply weapons to Ukraine following a dispute on grain export between the two countries. Alongside the U.S., Poland has aided Ukraine during Russia's invasion with tanks, fighter jets, and other equipment. The Prime Minister of Poland stated that through maintaining their military hub in Poland, quote, in agreement with the Americans and NATO is fulfilling the same role the whole time as it has fulfilled and will fulfill, end quote.
After almost 4 months, Hollywood sighs with relief as the WGA, along with big studios and streaming networks, finally reach a potential agreement to end the strike. Negotiations between the Writers Guild of America, the Alliance of Motion Pictures, and television producers reached an agreement after 146 days of striking. Over the course of 5 days, lawyers for the WGA and the AMPTP hashed out a deal with complicated and groundbreaking additions to meet the minimum basic agreement. The last of the items discussed was the use of AI for content production. The strike is still active during the contract approval, and the ratification process picketing has been suspended. And the Guild is scheduled to vote soon on whether to cease the strike. The contract agreement details won't be made public until the final language is established. It is possible that the deal will be approved by members and the eager support of the WGA leaders. The Guild acknowledges and credits, quote, the power it enjoys thanks to the extreme solidarity and shoe leather activism demonstrated by members, end quote. From the strike's beginning, WGA East and West orchestrated monumental picket line operations that springboarded the work of many strike captains. On both coasts, members organized picketing strike teams to halt activities on productions that attempted to shoot completed scripts after the WGA's strike went into effect. The WGA succeeded by demanding that Hollywood's biggest employers address their main priorities in the first contract negotiation since 2017.
This past week, citizens of Fullerton banded together to protest at City Hall. The objective: Save the Urban Greening Grant Program for Union Pacific Trail Phase 2. The $1.78 million grant would have created a new trail and planted approximately 176 trees, over 10,000 shrubs alongside water capture components and other trail amenities. Residents were excited about the renovation. However, on August 15th, Mayor Fred Young and City Council members Bruce Whittaker and Nick Dunlap all voted against the grant. This angered residential attendees at the meeting, with one resident pointing out how the decision enabled classism. The new chief advised to escort this same resident out of the meeting and was seen later apologizing to her outside. Edith Nussi, residential activist and active for the city community centers, realized many citizens were not aware of the vote and took matters into her own hands. She organized a community walk to show residents where the trail would have been located and conducted surveys to gain community input. The results show an outstanding positive response towards wanting a trail for the Southside community. Another protest is being organized for the next City Council meeting on Thursday, October 5th at 5 p.m. Igles stated, quote, "I believe that we have a responsibility to our young generation to give them a better world, and I'm going to fight for that. We have to take action," end quote. As of right now, the City Council has not spoken further about the issue.
At least 5 Fullerton street vendors were shut down by police and health and code enforcement officials on September 14th. Vendors experienced a seizure of their food equipment, and some were even forced to throw out their food. Most of the vendors interviewed retained that they had either attempted or held all necessary health and food handling permits. However, many street vendors are operating in a, quote, legal gray area, end quote, under current rule, according to KTLA. There are specific street food requirements that can only be met through selling food in a food truck, which is an expense most vendors cannot afford. Peter Quesada, owner of Baja Street Tacos, stated, quote, "When you go knock on that last legal door and say, 'I need a spot,' they say there's no such thing, that you need a food truck. But I don't have $100,000 to go buy a truck, so that's why we do this," end quote. In additional street interviews, vendors expressed their frustration and said that some people in the community just don't want to see street vendors in their city. Neighboring cities such as Anaheim, Santa Ana, and Orange have also taken similar steps to remove street vendors, citing concern over health risks and threat to local restaurants as a reason for recent crackdowns.
All right, we're going to move into the banter part of our show now, and we're going to start with the Poland and Ukraine story. So how impactful then is the U.S. funding towards Poland, as you guys see it?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's pretty impactful just because, as you mentioned earlier in your story, that U.S. is helping Ukraine, but Ukraine's also helping Poland. And recently there's been a dispute between the two. So I think that may cause problems later in the future. So
I have to say I agree. I believe we already have so many issues regarding, being the country that loans out to struggling countries or countries going to war. And although that may be a noble sentiment, just as President Biden has pushed and he's really about the people, I do wonder, as well as many other Americans, what that means for our economy in the future.
I agree. I absolutely agree. What do you guys think this could mean then for the U.S. in the future?
Well, I think definitely we're going to probably see more of a rise in taxes. We're going to likely see a struggle in our economy, especially for these younger people who are in our transitioning state from leaving the university and trying to join the workforce. And I've heard a lot of people trying to get houses, and it's been much more of a struggle. So I think it's going to be even more of an impact as the economy will very likely decline.
I agree.
Yeah, I would have to agree with her. I think that everything's just going to go up. I mean, and I think it just may cause problems between, maybe it might cause problems between the U.S., maybe Ukraine, Poland, just because they're both disputing right now. So we'll see what happens. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the strike. So what did writers demand and what did they receive through this new deal? Like, what are you guys thinking about that?
Well, they were generally concerned with the rise of artificial intelligence and
Right.
its ability to write stories possibly better than a human can. I personally don't agree with that, but there was that big fear with studios using AI to write their stories and having the job of the writer be a job that's no longer important. So there was this sudden panic. Also, just a general complaint about wages, about pay, livable wages for writers, and I think that just bottled up over several years, and now they were finally coming to demand their what's due to them if they.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree with you on the AI. I think that's not fair to the writers because writers' job is to be creative and share their ideas. I feel like with AI, in the way it allows them not to do the job and what they're passionate about. So I just think it's really unfair.
I have to say I agree, as well as I think they're just trying to fight for what they deserve, right? We've seen an increase in, inflation, so they just want to get an 11% general raise with their wage increase. So I totally understand it. I can see why with this economy they would want a reasonable increase in their wages.
Yeah, and why do you guys think this is such a monumental movement for the entertainment industry?
Well, it's as we discussed earlier, AI is on the rise. It's
Right.
it's becoming a very big part of our lives, and I think with the film industry, this is a very triumphant move because this is the writers' first. This is humanity's first way of fighting back against this new technology rise,
Right.
making sure that these machines don't step forth and remove those jobs that are essential to their livelihood. I mean, some of these people, they spend their whole lives writing stories, and that's all they're really good at. So now they're middle-aged, and this new technology comes along and could possibly write better than them. It's scary because what are they going to do?
Yeah.
I definitely agree. What do you guys think about President Biden's commentary on it, urging all employers to remember that all workers, including writers, actors, or even auto workers, which he had gone and talked to, deserve a fair share of their labors that they helped to create? I think it's really noble to be able to say all jobs are important and deserve equal pay and recognition.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And I think what's also really monumental about it, as I was saying, is now that the WGA has gotten heard, now there's a SAG-AFTRA, and that's actors, and yes, WGA have gotten their voices heard, but they kind of need the help of SAG-AFTRA now because it kind of comes hand in hand, writers and actors. So I just think that plays a really big role as well.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next story. Why don't we go ahead and introduce the topic of the Fullerton Trail? What do you guys think this is going to mean for the residents who are in the Fullerton area? A lot of them are low-income communities in the southern side of Fullerton. So we do see a lot of them really feeling devastated, and there seems to be an outcry from the Fullerton community. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, like you said, a lot of low-income communities there, and I think it's unfair to them just because this is the second part of the project that they're completing. They put so much money in for the first one, and for these counselors to say that they don't want to move forward, I think is really unfair because they donated so much money into this, and to not follow through, I just don't think it's fair to these residents.
I agree. In general, Fullerton is just an average industrial community. There's not really much going on, and it's really unfortunate. The class divide seems to be growing in this community, and you go into downtown Fullerton and you see, I hate using this word, but kind of like a gentrified downtown Fullerton, and then you go anywhere else in Fullerton and it's just businesses and unfortunately one-story houses, and it's an unfortunate situation. Here, of course, CSUF, we have the biggest, most probably prettiest buildings in the community, but that class divide is growing.
I have to agree. And I mean, what do you guys think that this will also do in terms of the state when they want to loan money? I was reading when I was doing my research that there was fear that perhaps there wasn't going to be any more funding opportunities because they were going to say, well, you're just going to take it back. So the community fears that this might be something that they might have to tackle in the future. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Do you think that's a possibility?
I think that's a possibility for sure. And if they do plan on moving forward, I think everything might just increase. As we were just talking about the economy, everything's just going to go up and up. So I don't think it's looking good so far for the residents, how you were saying.
Unfortunately, I agree. No, you've said it all.
Okay, and let's move on to our last topic, which is about the street vendors, as we were talking about. So why do you guys think it's so hard for these vendors to get the permits?
Well, there's a lot of paperwork and there's a lot of formalities, and we have to face facts about a lot of these street vendors. A lot of them are honestly immigrant families coming in and trying to find a livelihood for themselves. And currently we have a migrant crisis at the border, and we have a lot of new Americans coming into the country and trying to start up their businesses.
Right.
And they're not exactly familiar with the formalities of our country and about acquiring business permits. It's a lot different from where they come from. And there's honestly a big concern about health, about a lot of these vendors. I'm not saying all of them are that way. There are also, as we saw, there are plenty of street vendors without food trucks that have their permits and their food is perfectly healthy. But we have to think about health concerns for our own people too.
Right. And what do you think, Jasmine?
I have to say I agree. Health is definitely a big issue that we want to maintain and make sure that most of all our community is safe. And so if we don't have those permits in place, unfortunately, we don't have the authority to go out and do what we want to do in terms of vendors. I definitely, though, have to say that it tugged at my heartstring to hear the personal interviews of the vendors saying they don't have $100,000 to go out and buy food trucks to be able to get those policies and get those approvals in place in terms of the health and food handling permits. So I definitely feel for them. It's a tough situation. But I also do agree, you have to have the proper permits in place,
right,
and especially for the safety and health of our community.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's very unfortunate to these business owners because they have a family they need to provide for, right? And as you guys were saying, that they could be, doing safety protocol, but the fact that they don't have the taco truck is the only reason that's holding them back. And to get the taco truck, they have to go through this whole process of getting the permit, and that's just a big struggle in itself. And I was actually reading, there's an estimate stating that 10,000 street vendors in LA County, and only about 200 have received their permits. So it's a very, very tough decision.
Yeah, I personally don't agree with the law that street vendors should have a truck. I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, the permits I think are totally valid. Health is a priority, but to have a food truck, which is $100,000 as quoted before, I don't think that's necessary. I think that's wrong. I think there's a lot of people that rely on the business that their street vending does, and a lot of people just don't have that money.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And what do you guys think about the fact that there seems to be competition with other restaurants? Seems like these restaurants have to pay taxes, they're doing the actual permits, and they seem to be a little bit upset at the fact that the street vendors aren't doing the same thing. What are your thoughts?
I think it all kind of just goes back to the fact it's really tough to receive these permits. Right. I was actually reading an article that how you mentioned these restaurants are seeing competition between their restaurant and the taco stands. I mean, really the only difference is they don't have the bathroom, they don't have the setup. It's really hard to say.
I'm going to get in my last word and then we'll conclude. If the restaurants have a genuine concern with vendors taking away business, then they should speak to their community leaders and establish kind of zones where the vendors cannot enter so that they're not taking away any kind of business. And that would probably be the best. I think the majority of the restaurants' complaints are a bit unfathomable. I mean, it's a restaurant. If you want to eat from a place, you go there to eat. If vendor is not going to take away your business. If I'm cooking a hot dog on the side of the street and somebody's making spaghetti, I'm not going to go, oh, that looks so much better than what's in the restaurant, a place with permits, That's all I have to say about that. And with that, that's all we have time for today. Have a good week, everyone.
And stay tuned for more news, views, and info.
We'll see you next time on The Report.